I am joined today by the lovely Emily, and we are going to talk all about branding and professionalism on the online space. And I'm so excited to have this convo. If you are new to Emily, you need to follow her at Bootstrapped Woman. She does incredible web design. She did my website, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but her attention to detail and the way she speaks about web design and the purpose of it is so wonderful and inspiring. She is also a published author with a new book on the horizon, covering all different age spans. And she built a successful business before transitioning into helping other business owners and really just has such a wonderful and unique story that has brought her to where she is today. So, welcome to the show, Emily. So excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your start and why you're so drawn into big and bold brands.
Absolutely. So, my background is a very multi-passionate background, as many entrepreneurs are and start from. So, really, I got into creativity when I started writing my book out of university, which was all about body image. I ended up teaching myself how to do photography, and I owned a studio for a few years. I ended up photographing, I think it was 75 women for my book, Body Positive Guide to Loving Your Body. And naturally, things just sort of evolved along that journey. It took me a while to get published, but I did a lot of freelance creative work along the way. Marketing, I had a full-time marketing job. And eventually, I quit my full-time job and I got into coaching. And I was kind of looking for that next step, that evolution that would take place after Body Positive had been out and I had been promoting it for a while. And I had established a pretty big audience with that book and that niche. And so I started coaching women, just sort of like overall women's empowerment, women's life coaching. And what happened was I ended up coaching a lot of women more on the creative marketing side of their business.
Mm.
And then I started to actually do some of the work for women, and I realized I needed that balance between sort of like the creative but also the challenge of marketing and writing. So I kind of combined all of those things and I created the Bootstrapped Woman, and I quit working with taking on freelance jobs with big companies that didn't really interest me. And I really honed in on working with women small business service providers. And here we are now.
I love it. And I know that one of your pillars, you'll word it better than me, but one of your pillars is really based around equality and being loud and proud about the kinds of messaging that you put out and the types of clients that you work with. So, how did you get to a point where any fear associated with being, more outspoken kind of wasn't relevant to you anymore? I know in Canada it's a little different, but I was on a coaching call last week with some of my mastermind girls, and a couple of them are in the States, and they were saying that maybe the climate's a bit different there than here, because I was surprised to hear them say that they were hesitant to
Mhm.
openly be more vocal about supporting, LGBTQ plus community, these sorts of things. So was there ever a point where you were nervous to do that, or have you always inherently been outspoken?
You know what? I think a little bit of both. I think no matter what, like it's in our biology to like want to be liked and part of the crowd. Back when, the saber-toothed tigers could attack us, we wanted that sense of belonging and community. So I have done quite a bit of research on shame and guilt and things like that. And for me, the driving force, from the beginning of when I started my work in the body image industry was really I wanted to take away a lot of that shame and guilt.
Mm,
And so I think my approach is very much like I say what I feel, I believe what I believe, but I also do it with a really empathetic touch. I think, like no shame if you ever thought differently, but now that you have this information, like what will you do with it? Right. And I want to encourage and inspire other women to speak up and speak out and stand out about what beliefs resonate with them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like super like in your face. It can be done in a really like beautiful, authentic way. And yeah, so I think it's always been inside of me. I always, like I was the kid in grade school, like writing letters to the principal about how the girls were being treated. So like it is ingrained in me. Um, But also I think that being bold is just, doing things despite the fear that you might have, without the worry of what the consequences can be.
I agree. And I think having a bold brand is something that a lot of people say that they want. They say they want to be memorable. They say they want to have a bold, recognizable brand. And that's going to mean very different things for different people in terms of the type of messaging that they're putting out, in terms of the colors that they're using and the styles and all of that. So before we dive into more into that, why don't you tell us, for the people that are not familiar with your branding, if you're not familiar with Emily's branding, you're about to be, and you'll recognize her everywhere. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you can literally see it behind her. And if you're listening in on podcast, then go check out her profile and it will be clear to you in 2.5 seconds. But give us like the Coles Notes overview of your, basically like your brand kit, including your messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. So my whole thing is that I really helped small women-owned businesses stand out without burning out, and I want to help them grow their online presence, wealth, and impact in the world. So really, I believe that a woman's business can be world changing. And as
Mhm.
cheesy as that sounds to some people, for me, it is the driving force behind my business. It's really the reason I do what I do, because women statistically do better things with their money for this world. And without money, we have no power to create change. We live in a capitalistic, patriarchal society, and our only way out is to get more wealth as women and then create the change that we want to see. From a visual standpoint, it's kind of like, I like to think like the light pink with the red is sort of like that mixed messaging. It's like I can be soft and I can be feminine and I can be womanly and I can also be loud and brave and courageous. And I think that is kind of everything that I want to encapsulate as a brand. And it's just that you don't have to do anything one way to make a
Mhm.
difference. You can just be true to who you are. And honestly, I like pink and red.
I always say that your branding should be things that feel natural and easy for you, and it's probably gonna be things that you like, because when you like looking at those colors, it's not gonna bother you to be out here making graphics with them. If you don't like them and you're forcing yourself to use them, it's so much harder.
Exactly. I know some people like to focus more on like the sales psychology, like the color
Yeah.
psychology, and that definitely comes into play, but also, you can use different shades of like your favorite color to communicate the same thing. But at the end of the day, like I always say to clients, like you can be an eco brand and be pink if you want. And
Yeah.
you can
You
be
don't
a
have to be
lawyer and
green.
yeah, exactly, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to do what everyone else is doing, and that is totally okay. You really
Yeah.
just have to be authentic and really find a way to communicate that with your personal brand as well.
Were you solid on your branding from the jump, or is it something that you kind of shifted and grew into over time?
A little bit. Like I've always been a pink girl. I mean, when I was young, I was like, I don't like pink, internalized misogyny and all that. But like, I've always loved pink. And when I started my author account for my book, I had a lot of pink in there. I actually had some like really cute turquoise and purple. But that decision was actually impacted by the book cover, which I didn't have a lot of
Mm.
control over creating when I signed with a traditional publisher. So I did go back to them and said, this is not exactly how I envisioned the book. Like I love the book cover and everything, but I wanted more like pink bold branding. And they decided, because of the target market that they were going after, they wanted to do things a little bit differently, which is kind of funny because I feel like I knew the market a lot better, and who ended up
Yeah.
being my target market was who I thought, not who they said it was going to be. No shame to my publisher. They've been fabulous, but creatively, as a creative person, it's hard to give up that control. So as I became a little bit more authentic, and I noticed that I kind of was, trying to communicate my message a little bit differently. I wasn't going with the flow. I had learned a lot as an author, as a public persona, like growing this
Yeah.
business and this author account. So I started to incorporate the pinks and red into my other brand, my author brand. And then naturally I kind of brought that all into Bootstrapped Woman when I started Bootstrapped Woman. And I just went 100% with it.
Where do the lips come in? If you're not familiar with Emily's branding, she uses these like super adorable, cute black booties a lot, and then also a vibrant red lip.
Yeah, it's funny because like I rarely wear lipstick, but
I have to say, I don't think I've ever
I
seen
wear it on my
you.
shirts, on my,
Yeah.
they're everywhere else on me. But to be honest, I don't know, like the red lip just spoke to me. Like there doesn't always have to be like a logical explanation for why you choose something, but like if I do look for that deeper meaning, that deeper connection, it's kind of like that like feminist sort of
Mm.
thing. Like for me it was a symbol of like feminism, and I just think it's edgy. It's like, you know what, I'm going to do things my way. And a lot of times in history red lipstick wasn't, it was like, oh, you're a slut, or you're you're a woman who it's not so perfect and demure, and whatever they
Yeah.
and want you to be. So I think it was kind of like a rebellion a bit, with the red lip in certain eras and stuff like that, although it was popular in other ones. But yeah, really it's a symbol of my feminist values and mission that I'm on.
That would be such a good reel. I'm just thinking about the trend that's going on right now when we're recording. That's like, if you ask me why I had red lips in my branding, I would tell you it's because I like them. But if you ask me on a deeper level, I'd tell you because like you should do that. That'd be so good.
Queen of like ideas right here.
Thank you.
I'm
So if
gonna go do
someone,
that now.
yeah, go like literally pause the Zoom, goes and post. So I know when I started working on my branding, it wasn't with Emily. We've done my website since then, but I was before working with someone to actually think through my branding, I was feeling all of this pressure to show up a specific way online. And really seeing your branding in your account is what inspired me to change what I was doing, because I was feeling so pressured to seem elevated. Elevated was this word I was telling myself that as a business coach, I needed to portray. And to me, what that meant was looking at what the other, high performing coaches were doing online and seeing this trend of everyone doing like a dark overlay on top of their photos and then some sort of font. I don't remember which one it is. Probably like a serif font that's like a little bit more wiggly in
Yeah.
white, and then maybe like some chartreuse or like bright neon color as a pop on top. That's what I felt like I needed to do. And I was trying so hard and then still trying to bring in elements of me. I was like, okay, maybe I'll bring in some flowers, but that looked just really cheesy to me. And it felt really forced and unprofessional, even though I was fully basing it on accounts that I felt like were super professional and elevated. Eventually I was posting to my clients being like, what do you think about this? And they all kind of said, this is not you. You're fun, you're bubbly, you are super feminine, you are like not at all this persona that's being reflected right now. And so I started posting profiles that I loved within my group, and one of them was yours. And I was like, why am I feeling all this pressure to do it a certain way? There is no certain way. And once I decided I could just fully embrace my own personality with the pinks, with the duck, with the daisies, with all these things, I just feel like that's when my whole business really came together. And that's when I was able to work with you to do the website, because I was like, okay, well, I know the vision, I know what's happening. So if someone is feeling so lost in their branding and so like it's so forced, it's so much work for them to go on Canva and make a reel cover, it's so much work for them to figure out, what how they're going to design their logo or whatever it is, how can they sort of take those first few steps to feeling like their brand is actually their brand?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many ways that we can pull parts of ourselves and infuse that into our brand. Like I always say, the secret sauce is you. You are the secret sauce to your brand recipe. And really my job when I'm doing branding is to pull those things out for you. Because I think sometimes we get really clouded over when we're trying to do it ourselves. It is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
To do it on your own. I do have a course, Unignorable, on Instagram that covers a little bit about if you wanted to take the DIY route for this. But it's also why I don't charge a lot for my branding package, because I like to keep things simple. Like you're not getting a 150 page like brand guideline document when you work with me. You're getting like 10 pages, maybe,
Mhm.
of what your brand strategy is going to be. And a lot of that is the visual, but it's also, I start with your mission, your values, all of those things, who you're serving, who you
Mhm.
are. That's more important to me when it comes to branding than the actual visuals. The visuals actually seamlessly come, when you have that information really clear and confirmed. So my first thing that I do when I start working with branding clients is I chat with them like one-to-one, like we're doing right now. And I learn about them. We just have a chat, and then I have them fill out like a really in-depth questionnaire about everything.
Yeah.
and and really, we're going to chat about like who you liked working with, who you didn't like working with, what makes you feel good. And also, part of it for me is intuitive, like not to be too woo woo, but like I am very empathic. Like I get a good read for people. So it's easier for me to pull those things out of people. And then it's play, that the visuals become the play part of the job. And it's the part I love the most once we've done all the written strategy and things like that. And people can do this for themselves as well, like play, right? What colors make you feel good? And when you choose fonts and colors and visual assets that make you feel good, you're going to call in the right people to your space. And that's exactly what I do with my brand. Like literally people just message me because of my branding sometimes, right? And that's the thing that starts conversations. So it doesn't have to be complicated. I think we overcomplicate it. And because there are so many, marketing guru voices out there that are telling us it's complicated, and to hire them for, $50,000 to do their
Yeah.
thing, it doesn't need to be that way. It can be simple. And I don't believe that we need to gatekeep this information or make it seem like it's more complicated than it actually is.
I totally agree. It's one of those things where, especially when you're starting out, like, to use your name, like, you can bootstrap it, you can. Emily's
Yes.
course is amazing. A lot of my girls have done it, and she did a masterclass for us too, and the way that she explains how to start uncovering what it is that you need and what you want is really amazing, and honestly, like, you could do that and then a month from now, 2 months from now, decide, "Okay, you know what? Now that I have these foundations and I am super clear, I am ready to invest in some more, a bigger branding package or getting my website done." But I think it is such a powerful place to start because a lot of it is introspective and kind of breaking down your own expectations or your own rules that you've set for yourself about what your brand needs to look like. So if I had jumped right into, website design when I was still in my like, I need a dark overlay and neon writing, then the website that I would have come out of it with, I wouldn't have liked it. I would have
Oh,
pretended
yeah.
I liked it, and I would have like, felt like it was cool. But when I had settled on the branding that I loved through a lot of this, internal work, when Emily sent it to me, I was like, it's great. It's basically perfect. I was like nitpicking a few things, but overall I could have hit publish and been totally happy with it because the colors, the symbols, the layout, the fonts, all of that had been predetermined and pre-decided, and I was already in love with it. So obviously she's a talented designer, and any way that was going to come out was going to be amazing. But all this to say, just because someone is an amazing web designer doesn't mean that you're going to love your result if you don't love the information that you've given. And that's why being really honest with what you want versus what you think you want or what you think you need is going to be so important. And this pressure to have a brand being a certain way or comparing it to other people is something we really need to move away from. In
And
your
you don't stand
opinion,
out, right?
totally, totally. Yeah, you're just another brand, right? And I agree, it's you that makes it different. You are the differentiator between you and the 600 other people in your niche. Like, it's really the more or less the only unique thing about your business is you. So, if someone was looking to create a professional polished brand, but that was still bold and representative of them, to you, what does a professional and a polished brand mean?
I think it's just a lot about consistency and repetition. I think like we make things complicated again. Like I said before, we make it like, oh, it's this hard thing to do. Really, it's just consistently using the same colors, the same fonts, the same type of assets, the vibe that you're giving off. It's keeping it consistent. And what happens as you become consistent, you become recognizable. And
Hmm.
then you become unignorable, rememberable. All of those things is what's going to make you stand out. And it just takes practice, repetition. Keep saying the same thing. I talk about the same values over and over again, maybe in slightly different ways, in different contexts. Maybe I talk about what's going on in the world, and relate it to the values that are the same. So
Yeah.
really it's just that repetition. Repetition is the best marketing that you can do, and it is the best thing you can do for your brand. And that's why you have to love your brand so much, because you're going to get bored with it almost. Like, it's getting bored is such a good thing when it comes to your brand, because you just have to keep repeating it.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to
Okay.
love.
So I was actually just thinking about that thing because so many people say that like you should be bored of your branding. And I am actually wondering if I don't believe that anymore because
True.
are you bored of your branding?
Not at all. Like
Exactly. And I'm not
sometimes I'm like,
either.
ooh, but you know what? I totally like, I have it easy because I work with other businesses. So when I feel like that need to like, oh, I want to be creative, I want to work with different colors, I get to do that with
You have an
someone else's
outlet.
brand.
But I'm actually wondering if the reason you're bored of your brand is because you're trying to be consistent and you're trying to be repetitive and you're using the same reel covers and you're using the same carousels and you're using all the same things, but you don't actually love it. So it's boring to you because at first it was novel and it was different and you're like, okay, I'm going to change how my feet looks, whatever. And there's like some other motivations going on. But when it gets to a point of just repeating and recycling, if you're getting bored of it, is it because branding is still really front of mind for you and you don't love it? Therefore, it doesn't feel right. So you're like, I think I'm bored of it. But I'm wondering if that's not actually what that feeling is because I've been using the same branding, the exact same covers, the exact same yada yada for months. And I'm not bored of it because I don't really think about it anymore. Your
Yes.
branding doesn't need to be something that you are consciously like, well, this needs to be on brand. I need to make sure this is now it's just like a machine that runs. The branding
Yeah.
is just part of the business. It just happens naturally. So it's not consuming my time and my energy. It's just something that exists. And I think that is the key here is that we're not looking for boredom. We're just looking for it to be the norm.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to change things up. Your values, you're still like, I mean, it's your passion for what you do that is going to
Mhm.
keep you excited about your business. So, if you can keep showing up and talking about the things that you love about your business, that's the important thing. And yeah, like you said, actually, that's a good way to put it, that like it almost doesn't even, your branding almost doesn't become a thing for you. And maybe that's what I mean by when I say bored. You're not thinking of
Yeah,
changing things up because it's a natural extension
ingrained.
of
Yeah.
your business, right?
Yeah. And I think that if you are feeling like it's not easy, it's not just ingrained in your business, and that's a sign that you're not there yet. And that's okay. You don't have to be right there immediately. You can do that internal work. You can do Emily's course. You can work with people to try and figure out what that means. But if you're listening to this right now and you're like feeling off or unsettled or unexcited about your colors, your branding, how you're showing up, then that is a sign to reflect on it a little bit more and figure out what it is that you're drawn to and the elements that you do love or you don't love. Or, if you have a palette of 6 colors, like I think about my palette, for example, there's a yellow that I never use. The only time I use it is in the center of a flower. Because every time I put it up, I'm like, not for me. So why would I not just remove that color from my palette, right? Or swap it over something else or keep it as that 10% accent color, whatever it is. But if there is something that's making you feel like, or if you were to send your brand kit to someone and they sent you back a graphic and it had all of your elements in it, but not in the way that you would do it and you didn't like it, like it's time to reflect on that and switch it a little bit and just think about it because big expenses are going to come up and it's so exciting to get things like your website and everyone wants that home base on the internet to really
Yeah.
feel like them and to feel professional and to feel you know they want to be excited to send it out to people, but you want to make sure that you're going to love it and you need to set yourself and your brand designer up for success.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong too with doing little brand refreshes along the way. Like, I know
Hmm.
I've tweaked some things here and there. But I didn't completely overhaul my brand, the strategy, the main core colors and things like that. So there's nothing wrong with doing little refreshes from time to
No.
time. the only time I sort of say like do a rebrand is if you're not attracting the right people in, you're changing your business, you're changing your services. That's the time to like do the big overhaul. Or if
Yeah,
you're like taking that next step in your business and it's time, like you said, if you DIY'd it for a while, if you bootstrapped it for a while, we all start there. Like,
totally.
we don't start businesses by going, I'm going to hire a brand expert,
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm
there's
gonna
nothing,
spend a
there should
hundred
be no
thousand
shame.
dollars on startup. Like, no.
There's no shame in DIYing it and figuring it out in the beginning. And I think that's the problem in our industry too, is there's so many experts out there that are like, oh no, like you have to book with me right away, invest in yourself right away. I'm sorry, but building a business is a journey and we each have to take those steps. It's like rites of passage, like we have to
Totally.
take those steps to become where we want to be, so
Yeah. And I know
I'm
you and I are
all
both
for
on the
helping
same
people.
page. Yeah. And you and I are both on the same page of like, we do not throw shade at a Canva logo. As long as
Yeah,
you are following the terms of use and you are, being responsible and you love it, like go do you. Like there's so much you can figure out on your own or you can do with a little bit of guidance and support. And when you are ready and it's different. Like when you're ready to invest in a bigger thing, like coaching, like marketing, like getting your website done, when you get it back, it's a different feeling that you've never experienced as an entrepreneur. It's a
yes,
feeling of like, oh my gosh, this person understood the vision. They made it for me. It's like Christmas morning, honestly, when you get it. So it should be
totally.
something that you are like working toward, unless you genuinely love doing website design, but like who
Yeah.
does? And if you do, you're probably a website designer. But like, yeah, Emily, right? Like you love it. I'm like, I don't know. So if it should be something I feel like you can aspire to, you can look forward to, but it doesn't mean that in the meantime that your brand is not good enough or not professional or
Yes,
whatever you're thinking.
exactly. And there are ways to tweak things. Like I know when I spoke with your group, for example, we talked about like, sort of that like airbrush style,
Yeah,
Etsy logo. I'm like, that looks DIY to me, right?
it
Like
does.
there's ways to DIY and still make it look good. And until you're ready to take that next step, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's no shame. And I think that more people need to realize that when it comes to building their business. Because I think the more women feel like they have to compete with other women, or that, we're against each other, the harder it is for us to all achieve the success that we're working towards in the world. And like literally, I'm not about gatekeeping. You message me and I will give you an answer.
Yeah, no, you're so supportive. It's great. And there are so many resources out there that you can get started on. Like you can search fun and flirty brand palette on Pinterest and see what comes up. And one of the favorite pieces of advice that you gave my girls is when they brought their branding to Emily, they brought it to the table, they showed their brand kit. And just because of her experience and her eye for design, she was like, you know what? We're actually just gonna, I think she kept saying, bump these colors up. You're like, we're gonna bump these colors up a little, increase the saturation, increase the brightness. And instantly it made such an impact on every single one of their brand kits. So I think that there is something to be said about coming to the table with something and then having someone with so much experience and so much of an eye for design look at it and just be like, this is such a good start. And like that person knows you're not ready to spend 5 grand, so they can offer you little tweaks, and maybe it's like a one-off coaching call or whatever it is, but people can come in and say, you know what, this, get rid of this drop shadow at least, or get rid of
Oh,
the watercolor background, increase the saturation. All of these little tips that are going to make you feel reassured. You've gotten a professional's eyes on your business. You've figured out, the elements that you like, and they've just been, I don't know, bumped up, if you will. There's so many options, and really can't hype up Emily's course enough in terms of going through it and really getting to know yourself and your brand and all of those things. So while we're talking about it, why don't you tell them kind of an overview of that course, and then I'll link it in the show notes.
yeah, absolutely. So it's $34 Canadian. It is an entry level way to get you started if you're going to DIY your brand, set your online presence up for success. Because not everyone can afford to have a website right away. I totally get it. We all start usually with something like an Instagram account. So,
Mm-hmm.
so really it's, creating an account that's optimized so that it can be found in searches, things like that. And then I go into how to create unignorable content for your social media account. So it's really, we talk about things like contrast and what you want to do to stand out so that when you post online, someone's going to go, oh, that's so and so's content, right? And literally that's what I get. People realize I'm posting and they don't even have to read the at bootstrap
Mm-hmm.
woman that's on my post that I include because they know it's from me. So it teaches you all those things. It's a great way to learn how to do things on your own. And really, there's no shame in trying to do things an easy, simple way, but it will have a great impact on your startup business.
Totally. And honestly, like my girls did it. They loved it. They got so many good takeaways. So I could see an immediate shift in their branding. It was such a powerful moment. And the other thing I want to say is I bought it, I did it, and then at checkout, I actually got the upsell for Emily to go to my Instagram account and give me suggestions on my name and my bio and all of that. And the analysis I got back, I'm not kidding, I have paid for so many Instagram bio audits and suggestions over the years. This one really, really blew me away just in terms of how much you went into detail into, okay, this is what I'm telling you to do, but here's the why. Because then later on, when I wanted to tweak it a bit, I had your words in my head of like, okay, well, Emily said she did this for this reason, and I could take the reason to help me tweak the result. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling frisky and you want to add a little bit onto your course purchase, I would highly endorse and recommend getting that add-on, just because it was so helpful. So yeah, I will link all of that for you in the show notes. You can't go wrong. Like such a wonderfully low price, so accessible for everyone to really walk away feeling like you've taken a big step in your business and feeling like you're taking yourself and your business seriously. Because as soon as you start investing and you get those results, and this is like a pretty instant gratification result thing, you're going to be able to just keep motivating and keep encouraging yourself to go for it and to keep growing. And it's going to be so much easier to show up. And I truly cannot hype it up enough. So
It
everyone
gives you
go
that
do it.
confidence.
100%. It's so much easier to show up and like get the merch and pass out your, business cards and whatever it is when you're feeling excited and confident and motivated by your branding. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. Why don't you tell everyone where else they can find you and anything else they need to know before we wrap up this episode?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at bootstrapwoman or my website, bootstrapwoman.com. It's as simple as
Too
that.
easy. We love a consistent brand moment. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Emily. As always, your experience and your approach to business and branding and marketing and all that is so refreshing and wonderful. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Always love connecting with fellow Canadian girlies. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was so good to be here.
Of course, everyone, make sure you go into the notes, check out everything that I've linked about Emily, and we will see you in the next episode.